Alrighty, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's time for another stream update because we are seeing the developments that we were hoping to see since our last private stream here. And this might be a public stream, we'll see. But yeah, the price targets we were focused on to the downside on Hex and Pulsechain and everything are starting to move. The incentive token, $1.70, it got tapped finally. Remember, we've been talking about this $1.70 incentive token, right? It finally happened. The sub 1 penny hex finally happening. We're getting into this range above 9/10 of a penny, so it's good to see. We had that rising wedge pattern that turned into a possible channel. Remember this wedge on Pulsechain we were talking about, where the price broke under, retested. It looked like it was trying to make an attempt at confirming a previous support into a moving resistance level, which went hand in hand with that head and shoulders, which actually got created, and then we came back down to this blue range, and we didn't necessarily fill the blue range yet, but we're just approaching it right here, right now. So we'll talk about that in a second. Not to get too deep into any of these tokens too early, but and then Ethereum, yeah, the inverse head and shoulder pattern that we had this that created throughout the month. You had the shoulder, the head, the shoulder, and then boom, created that next arm up, which we know based on the last stream we were talking about. All these moves came from the Federal Reserve. Jerome Powell speaking, sent the markets up, came back, flirted with all-time highs, found that resistance. We wicked above all-time highs, but then essentially candles closed and we created a lower high there. And then you had this ascending triangular pattern that price just eventually broke out of because the resistance just seemed to be too strong. And then also too, remember, we always talk about this at least like 3 times a stream, it seems like. We talk about these impulsive candles. You like to see the markets move with nice structure and balance. It doesn't like to see imbalance. It likes to see the support, the resistance, the support, the resistance. You like these nice waves, right? So whenever you get whenever you get these big vertical patterns, you always should expect to see the markets at least fill about half of where that imbalance is formed, which is, without measuring it, somewhere in this general area. And then if you're really a chart guy that looks at the horizontal structures like I do, we always do in this community, you have the structure here, you have the structure here, you extend that over, that would be a good area to guess, like, okay, price should at least want to come back to this range. And as you see, price came to that range and bounced off of it, but since then has just completely dumped back down to the ranges we were trading at before we actually had the Federal Reserve news, which in this scenario, it's a good thing, because what was resistance while we created the inverse head and shoulders is being a targeted support area, right? So we had this area highlighted for that reason. So the fact that price is coming down here is a good sign. Like to see that. We're filling the imbalance. That's good. Now we have an opportunity to create these higher lows, right? And even though this whole Federal Reserve pump kind of throws things out of whack, you still have this consecutive like higher low potentially. So good sign. We're coming down, filling some areas, getting a little bit of a reset, and of course Pulsechain's coming down with it. And I don't want to say it's as expected because we don't know what's happening, right? We don't know if the price is ever going up or down, but it's not anything that we're shocked by. Things that we've talked about is huge potentials for prices to reach all these areas. So things are kind of just going according to plan, and we're seeing proper structure being set in the midst of this. Now, I'll break down Ethereum a little bit more on tomorrow's private stream, but just to kind of update, like, hey, we're getting to these areas. We talked about these areas, and if I'm just drawing a basic TA without analyzing at a smaller scale, you might see a little bit of a bounce that can go as high as the 40, just under 4,500, maybe 4,500 range. You always get bounces off these dips. I'd be shocked if this red range didn't hold some form of support. And then, even if it does bounce, it doesn't mean it's out of the woods yet, because then you're approaching this level of resistance next, which, could be the sign of wanting to push down, or we could see, a higher high or a higher low be created in the midst of this mini dip. Like, a lot of things can happen, but we're not going to go out and forecast too much of that right now. Let's just catch ourselves up to date and kind of summarize what's happening and recognize that there's a lot of volatility in the market, but if you can understand the price chart and what's happening in the ecosystem beyond these things, it's not things that should be rattling anybody or should be anything that causes emotion to start interfering with your decision making, or your emotions starting to mess with your patience or lack thereof, right? So, and everything that's happening across the market is good. Like, we're seeing proper structure being formed. Now, Hex has been, we basically found the top at the end of July. Now we're at the end of August. It's been kind of resetting for a month. And like we talk about in the Patreon all the time, these markets, even in a bull market, it's not going to make just everybody rich real quick. It's a bull market's not easier than a bear market. Like, the bull market, it's better because, yeah, your portfolio has a bigger number in it, but really, when the market moves that fast, the actual time spent in that bull cycle is much less time in the bear cycle. But inside of that fraction of a time we do spend actually pumping, your patience is constantly being tested with these pullbacks that last days and weeks. Like here in Hex, if you're just, you kind of FOMO buy this buy right here instead of focusing at the lows, like how we were really pinpointing out clearly that these are big areas of opportunity, but that's way in the past. But let's say you FOMO buy this run up here, and then you see this whole price start to move sideways for 2-3 weeks at a time, and you're like, okay, finally, you start to get that breath of fresh air, like, okay, we got the pullback, things might go up again, and then boom, nope, before you know it, we get this huge capitulation that sends us way below levels that you would not expect to see in a healthy price chart, or at least you would think, right? That's how a typical investor in all markets would think, and the psychology behind the market is what moves the market, and that's what makes TA so sound when you do look at the story that's being printed in these candles. And when you look at the story that's being told inside of these candles, you can understand that psychology is just something that is part of why we find certain patterns to be such signals, and why we can expect certain things to happen, and why you can focus on different levels of the market to really find areas or opportunities. So yeah, with that all being said, the fact that we're getting this capitulation under a penny, that's going to shock a lot of people. But if you prepare for those types of things, like knowing that the bull market doesn't want anybody to win, whether it goes up or down, it's going to test your patience. So if you're starting to run out of patience because you're expecting the next leg up, and then this thing just goes the total opposite way after already pulling back for weeks, that can shake a lot of people out. So once you get these proper pullbacks, not only to come test this structure that we've been focused on for about a month now in the past, we're finally hitting that, not necessarily completely filled it, but it at least tapped it. But not only for that reason, but it's also to get people shaken out. People that are already emotionally attached to their bags and their positions, and they expect something to go up eventually to feel better about themselves or about their position, it'll go down, and people will start making emotional decisions. And yeah, people will lose just as much in a bull market as they do in bear markets, right? So that's why I've been telling everybody in our private group, like, it's not financial advice by any means. I don't do financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but really just chilling and enjoying the ride when you're at this phase of the cycle where prices are going to go up. There's going to be volatility both ways along the way. So anyways, yeah, so on the daily chart, Hex is finally coming down to our area. We've had under a penny here. Wicked it, didn't necessarily fill it completely like I just said, but it has been touched, so we're finally starting to get to this range. And remember, when we throw this Fibonacci on this pump, the levels that we're actually sitting at, going from wick to wick, remember the 618 level was holding strong. We were at that 1080 or just over a penny, 1.08 pennies, or 1080 range I like to call it. We were bouncing there for a while, but that was just kind of going hand in hand with that golden 618 range. But then that 50% range kind of fills you down where we had this target that was near all this previous structure. So kind of wicking somewhere in that range or even under it is something I like to see where, okay, usually the final washout of a pullback is when you see those hard candles push really far below what normal rhythms of the market would say or would tell us that they would go to. So yeah, I'm not saying that the bottom's actually in, but now I'm saying, like, this is where I'm starting to prepare to look at the position and start focusing on, okay, what area specifically can we see turnarounds? And once we start to fill this range even more, that's where I'll start doing more daily updates on this particular coin. But yeah, at least wanted to summarize it like, hey, this coin is finally coming back down to our range. It's a good sign, and we're starting to test proper structure. If you zoom out of it, remember, I mean, coming out of the bear market, you needed to see these higher lows here. We got that higher low confirmation And then this little bit of a downtrend that we showed from May through July eventually got broken, retested, and pushed up. So we got the signals that the bear market is over, but just because the bear market ended doesn't mean the thing's going to go straight up. So we're finally getting that real big first bull flag of the new bull market. And this thing, like I said, it can still test your patience for a while, but now we're getting at ranges where even if it goes below, it'll be something similar to like wicks. So the price shouldn't stay that low for that long. Not saying from this current moment, but I'm saying that from when we actually do get done fulfilling all this structure and resetting the actual floor that we can treat as a launch pad. But like Elliott waves, you get the wave 1 impulse, wave 2 correction, then wave 3. I mean, those are the targets we'll start talking about those once we find the bottom. So just make sure you stay tuned. If you're not part of the private community, get in there. We do some good stuff. We talk about good things all the time, and we stay highly focused. Something that's very important about investing, if you want to treat this coin in this ecosystem like it's legitimate, because it is, you have to detach yourself from the community that's on X or Twitter, because what you get on there is a lot of people calling for attention that don't really know what they're speaking about, that are either too emotionally tied to their bag, so they're going to be tweeting based on their sentiment, whatever they wake up feeling, or if the prices aren't doing what they want them to do, if their bag's not treating them how they want to be treated, well, then they resort to likes, right? So it's easy to get caught up in the likes and the attention and the engagement. Believe me, I've been there before. Built a big X page, got like 30-something thousand followers before that was like really known to be a thing in the community. And it was cool, right? It was cool, but of course, like how I talk to you guys on my Patreon, it's just something that's not fulfilling and it's not the direction I want to go. That's why I still want to contribute to the community, but I want to do it in my own way where it's separate from those distractions and other opinions. We just focus on the charts, the ecosystem, and the big man himself, the moves that are actually important to be watching. And that's what we do. So I want to add a level of professionalism to these core tokens. So when you or anybody else that you know that loves this ecosystem wants to treat it seriously and get some real analysis and up to date with all the news and stuff that's happening here, that's what I'm here for. And there's none of the silly distractions or, hype stuff that goes on the social media aspect. So just tune in if you haven't tuned in yet. But I dedicate myself to that and make sure to add that value to the community, to the people that do want to take it seriously. But anyway, so yeah, Hex is doing its thing. Something we've talked about already. So, and then yeah, for the people that didn't have access, but to the last time we streamed, we had this rising wedge pattern, which typically is a sign of a reversal, no matter if the price is going up or down. So just looking at the technicals, when you have this wedge where the tip of it's actually starting to point at each other, where they eventually will collide, that's usually a sign you might get a reversal. So that was the first signals, because Hex was starting to dip, but Pulse itself wasn't looking so bad. So once Pulse started to keep chipping up, what it really did, remember, we're focused on this wick. We use this wick as a magnet. That's why I told you guys, even though price dipped really hard off of this top and then ended up pulling back, we found our structure there that we talked about. The one thing that I was telling you guys about was this wick at the very least is going to get filled. And that's exactly what happened. The wick got filled, but the wick didn't get broken. Instead of the wick breaking, we created this rising wedge sort of pattern, which, like I said, signals in typical or traditional TA a reversal. And then once you topped off after fulfilling this wick, you had the big dip. We bounced off this horizontal structure and then essentially broke down and hit our blue range. Now, I was focused more in the middle of this blue range, this 44 level, which are really close. The fact that we got to the blue range is good, but we didn't really get to, just like Hex. When this bounced off the blue range, Hex bounced up over a penny. And it just wasn't the most fulfilling sort of structure that I was really looking to see. So the fact that it came back up, that's where I talked to you guys about the head and shoulder pattern now on Pulse. And it looks like this shoulder I drew out, price came right to that. It was like a picture perfect retest of that wedge, but you had the shoulder, the head, and then on that stream I was talking about, you have this potential of creating not only a shoulder, but a lower high here, fresh off a wedge. So you had three reasons: the wedge, the head and shoulder, and the lower high as a technical reason for price to want to pull back. Actually, the fourth reason would be we didn't really fulfill this blue range completely yet. So a lot of the things pointed at price wanted to kind of reverse there. Not saying that this is going to go down and create lower highs macro. No. Think about this. The same way we want to create that structure on the Hex chart just at 9/10 of a penny, this high here from this cycle extended over, that's where I have that 44 range at. So you're filling structure at 9/10 of a penny, kind of where we're at now on Hex. Well, you should start hopefully seeing this fill that structure too. Even if price wants to wick down and really capitulate, finding a level of support here where that previous resistance was back in May on the macro scale, you zoom out, just look at it. Like it's really a good looking chart. It's a real good looking chart. Got this higher low, new higher high, and then now you're just looking for higher lows. If you can get a higher low here on the macro level, I mean, you're talking real good stuff. And again, we talked about this already, but again, I might put this on YouTube, so I'm going to say it again briefly. Richard Hart, even though the prices are dipping right now, everyone kind of not panic bought, but everyone FOMO bought when allegedly that big wallet that may or may not be him bridged over about $5 million worth of Ethereum, and people are like, oh, he's going to deploy it. Well, he's not going to just go ahead and just hand that wallet's not going to hand everybody that's looking to sell green candles. But anyways, people still bought that up, right? People bought that up. Then the price just came and dipped because nothing happened, and then the Federal Reserve news with Jerome Powell talking about reducing the interest rates. That happened. That caused another spike. So naturally, if you look past all the smoke and mirrors, the market's just going to it where it naturally wanted to be. The market naturally wanted to reset itself around these areas, in my opinion. So the fact that it still found a way to get back down here, even with the bridging, even with the Federal Reserve announcement, that's something that is really good and strong and sound structurally. But what I was going to say that we already talked about on every other stream, the fact that Richard Hart is supposedly deploying one of the biggest marketing campaigns in history, which should blow minds away. If that's the case, you're not going to get a price chart that doesn't look pretty, right? You don't bridge over funds and not use them just to have them there. And if you put two and two together, the funds get bridged over to go hand in hand with the marketing. So when the marketing actually hits the actual ground running, you have bridged over funds that could potentially be used to start, pumping economic energy into these tokens. And the amount of money that's sitting in those wallets is enough to double these prices. Not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't take much. A couple clicks of a button, a couple snaps of a finger, you're looking at double the prices. So, I mean, that it's just there to be deployed. So you're genuinely looking at a ticking time bomb depending on how well that strategy is actually deployed from Richard Hart, I would say, assuming he's the one in control of it. But, yeah, so looking for dips is a dangerous game in a bull market, but when you look at where we want to find sound structure and look at the fundamentals and just the overall sentiment, the ecosystem, things kind of still needed to do that full reset. So the fact that we're getting down there, it's a positive sign in me. Remember, we couldn't get above $1.70 on incentive token forever, right? Forever. We were trading sideways since May all the way through late July. Like, it was May, June, July, yeah, a couple months. Then we finally broke it. We never came back and tested that $1.70 as a support. Remember, we were talking about that. I've been talking about this all of August, reminding you guys for about 25 days now. We still have not tested $1.70. We got close, but we finally got this descending triangular pattern where we had this high. Remember, we got a wick up there. That wick will eventually get filled. You guys know that already. We talked about that. But you had all these lower highs, flat bottom, descending triangle. The bounce just gets like dropping a basketball. Boink, 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 and then it breaks, right? So we're finally starting to see that break a little bit. We got the test at $1.70. It's only wicked as of right now. But just to see that price is finally coming back down to test this $1.70 that was so sought after as a resistance line to be broke. Now we're finally coming back down to test it as a potential support. So good stuff you want to see, and even capitulating down to $1.57. That was a key range throughout this summer too. We've been focusing on. So the fact that we're finally moving, this is great because I feel like the markets have kind of been boring. That's what happens. You get that big pump. It's fun. Everyone's enthusiastic, getting that euphoric feeling. Then they pull back, test your patience, bore you to death. There's not really much to talk about because these targets I pointed out, I mean, these are targets we talked about 2-3 weeks ago. So it's like every time I get on stream, I'm like, man, it's the same target, the same thing, but it's finally happening. So that's why I wanted to stream now, because we're starting to see that happen. So now we're looking at support down at this $1.70 range. Good sign. Makes me feel good. And we'll talk about Pulsechain. There's our baby Helgo right there. Helgo's giving opportunities. I mean, structurally, look at that 10 range. If you're at 12.9 right now, structurally, just how Hex has that 9 range, 9/10 of a penny. Whatever, though. We'll talk about those in the actual Patreon. We'll talk about all the other altcoins and all your guys' requested coins, too, in the Patreon. And then PulseX. Yeah, so we had that ascending triangle finally being broken out. Geez, it was a little bit of a funky one because it was handling that horizontal resistance pretty well. And then we appeared to bounce off this ascending bottom. We since then have created a lower high, which confirmed what the market needed to see. The economic energy just finally ran out. Buyers finally got exhausted. Boom, lower high, and we ripped through. Came down, test our red range. Our ranges are getting hit across the board, ladies and gentlemen. So this is all we want to see. And keep in mind, PulseX didn't necessarily isn't working off of like how Hex and Pulse, the markets are up here, kind of coming back down to test those local highs back in May. PulseX is just on a different, it's moving to a different tone. But it's a better looking chart in the micro scale too. But remember, you have this low, then you had the higher low, broke out. Didn't necessarily get past the cycle high yet. So you want to see PulseX get above that. But I have a good feeling that when everything else gets ready to take off, this PulseX will finally reset itself. And then, I mean, you know the target's up there once we get moving. But we'll talk about that a different day. But PulseX finally coming back down to our range. So overall, moral of the story is everything is coming down to the ranges we've been talking about for a long time. And I want to just put that out there for the people that haven't been tuned in. If nobody's out there kind of walking you through what needs to be analyzed in the markets with a non-biased, clear, rational, calm, composed mind, here I am. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to serve each and every one of you. But I'm not here to do it publicly for anybody and everybody, because there's a lot of people out there that use these charts to make certain moves and, you know, could use that to their advantage, which, I mean, if they really wanted access, it's still here. But I'm just not out there putting my face out there and all my work out there. So I just want to let you guys know that I am here, and I definitely, you know, am here to serve. So I'll keep it at that. It's about a 22-minute stream already, so I didn't want to go too long. We'll post this live on YouTube. We'll post this in the Patreon, obviously, but make sure you get tuned in. And once we start seeing these charts push down, potentially fill these wicks, I'll go live again, probably tomorrow or in 2 days, depending on the price action, because we might see bounces here. And then once we see the market sort of settle itself out, and once the smoke settles, I'll do another private stream. We'll talk about areas where we can see the bottom essentially start to form. So yeah, stay tuned, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.